Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Creative Charitable Planning with Non-Cash Assets with our special guest, Brian Klontz, President and Founder of Charitable Solutions. I'm Cindy Sherrick, Director of Gift Planning here at Seattle Foundation, and I'm joined by Steve Sofeld, Philanthropy Advisor at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. We are so glad you're here. As many of you know, this event is part of an ongoing series called Professional Advisor Continuing Education, or PACE. We are excited to be offering this PACE event in a virtual format for the first time, and to be hosting this event in partnership with our great friends at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. Steve, thank you so much for co-hosting with us. Would you share with our audience a little bit about your work at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation?
Thanks so much, Cindy. It's really our great pleasure to co-host this event with our valued colleagues at Seattle Foundation. Here at GTCF, we serve the greater Pierce County region largely in a variety of important ways that include helping donors set up DAFs, designated or field of interest funds, and advising nonprofits looking to set up agency funds. In addition, we're working on building a growing network of professional advisors in our community who are well-versed in charitable strategies for their clients. Community foundations are really valuable resources for local professional advisors. That's especially true when it comes to partnering with donors to strategize around having the most impact possible as they plan their philanthropy now while living, and later as they give thought to their estate planning. At GTCF, our goal is to make professional advisors, those we partner with, look good. So we really strive to make you look even better than you already do. The community foundation space is perhaps the most collaborative industry you'll find, which is what brings us together today. We're really focused on finding meaningful ways to make local philanthropy better. And again, that's why we're all here. We thank you all for joining us in this vital work for our community. And with that, I'll hand it back to Cindy.
Thank you so much, Steve. One of the things that I really love about the work that we do at Seattle Foundation is that we get to partner with other community foundations who are similarly dedicated to creating local impact on their communities through elevating the importance of philanthropy. I would like to take this time to extend a special gratitude to all of the advisors on this call today who have worked closely with either Seattle Foundation or the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. At Seattle Foundation, 60% of our new donor advised funds and 80% of our new bequests come as a result of a referral from a professional advisor. I know that when we all come to the table and work collaboratively, we can help clients achieve the best outcomes in their planning goals and simultaneously further their individual legacy and impact on the world. It is such a great honor to do this work with all of you. So with that, I'll hand things over to my colleague, Natalie Pond, for a few quick housekeeping notes so you can get the most out of today's session.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Happy to run through that housekeeping really quickly here. First of all, everyone is muted and cameras are off just to limit noise and disruptions. We are recording today's presentation, and so we'll send a link to that recording along with the slides early next week. At the end of the program, we will have some time for Q&A, which will be moderated by Cindy and Steve. For any questions that you have that come up during our program, please just use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or it might be at the top if you are using a phone or a tablet to join us today. We'll get to as many questions as possible during our time. This event does have the option for a live transcript and closed captioning. If you would like to turn this feature on or off or change the size of the closed captions, you can do so by clicking the live transcript button, which is again at the bottom of your Zoom window if you're on normal computer desktop situation, or it might be at the top if you're using a phone or tablet to join. Finally, when you sign off today, you'll be prompted to take a quick survey about your experience, and please do take a few minutes to do this. It helps all of us continue to improve our webinar offerings. And want to really stress this, if you're here for CE credit, you'd like CE credit for attending this session, completion of the survey is required. Additionally, just note for any questions that you might have about getting that CE credit, if you have any questions about what it looks like to get those, concerns about making sure that happens, please do feel free to contact us after the event via email. We're happy to touch base and make sure that happens for you. I'll now go ahead and pass it back to Cindy to introduce our speaker for today, Brian Klontz.
Thank you, Natalie. And I am very honored to introduce today's speaker, Brian Klontz. Brian is the founder and president of Charitable Solutions, LLC, a national firm specializing in complex charitable gifts, especially non-cash assets like real estate, business interests, cryptocurrency, and life insurance. He's also the founder of multiple national donor advised funds that have collectively raised over $5 billion in non-cash assets. He's created the National Gift Annuity Foundation, which is the largest national independent gift annuity platform. Brian has decades of experience in charitable planning, having held senior roles at the United Way, Boys and Girls Club of America, and the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta. He holds advanced degrees and numerous professional designations in financial planning, insurance, and philanthropy. He's given more than 2,000 presentations, written extensively on charitable gift strategies, and is a monthly columnist at Forbes. Simply put, when it comes to creative charitable planning with non-cash assets, Brian is one of the most experienced voices in the field. So we are very pleased to have him with us today. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Brian Klontz.
Thank you, Cindy, very much. Great to be with the Seattle Foundation of Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. Work with them over the years on a lot of different things, and just as Cindy and Steve said, being able to have such bluntly robust community foundations with the amount of impact that they create for your overall region, you should be very proud of what, frankly, you have built as professional advisors when your clients are planning something or selling something during life or at death, seeking a community foundation as a solution to do that. Again, much of that, just as Cindy said, is based on those professional advisor referrals. So with that, I hope to give you an additional tool and planning perspective relative to charitable planning, which gets a little bit more complex, but talking about things beyond cash. So obviously this will be creative charitable planning with non-cash assets. I have a couple case studies as was mentioned. I think Natalie mentioned I have about 10 minutes for any questions. Love to get those sort of in the Q&A as I go. And then that way, I think Cindy will be able to MC it a little bit toward the end. And again, all these slides will be sent out to you as well. So if I'm on a plane and I don't want to talk to the person next to me, which I never do, ever, and they say, what do you do for a living? What can you say to immediately shut them down if you're going from SeaTac to Shanghai or Oklahoma City, doesn't matter. You can say, I'm a life insurance agent, and they will not say another word ever. It is glorious, by the way, as sort of human repellent. If I do want to talk to them, never do, but if I did, and I would say, they say, what do you do for a living? I would say, I help wealthy people give weird things to charity. That's what I do. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, is all kinds of assets. I will guarantee you, I promise you, that after my roughly 1 hour, in our 1 hour together, and you're getting your C and everything else, that you will have a completely different perspective about the possibilities of what types of non-cash assets can actually be optimal, frankly, not just conducive, but optimal for your charitably inclined clients. So with that, we're going to jump right in. I should also say, I don't think this is going to come through very well with my video here, but I have written a book, kind of it's coming in and out, but Charitable Gifts of Non-Cash Assets. It's free, so I'm not really pitching it. But you can get it online. And so it is 480 pages of non-cash goodness. It is gluten-free, which everybody asks about. They don't. It could be a great book club book. We got holidays coming up. Could be a great book for that too. But the bottom line is there are 18 separate chapters. Each chapter is based on a specific type of asset, and it can be downloaded for free. Happy to provide to Cindy, Steve, and team that link to be able to do that just as a PDF. So this is obviously a very, very high level summary of specific types of assets. But if you've got particular clients that are very deep in real estate or crypto or S Corp, this book really goes very, very deeply into each of those particular assets. So now I will start. So we're going to talk about, obviously, the agenda. So non-cash market overview, sort of the different types of assets more broadly. And then we'll talk very specifically about individual assets, including some case study, at least anecdotes. Then we'll go into the non-cash tax seminar. It's actually less than 5 minutes, so the CPAs are probably not happy about that. Everybody else usually is. And then at least the reason why at this sort of stage, at that fourth bullet point, you may be thinking, okay, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and all this sort of makes sense, and absolutely we should be doing a ton more. I'm going to gloss over some things that are challenging in this space. And so these are at least the reasons why about 80% of non-cash assets are at least initially declined. So we'll talk about some of the planning, sort of financial considerations, legal considerations, sort of the non-financial or legal considerations too. And then finally, just 2 case studies to go over, one which will involve real estate and one that involves S Corp stock. So with that, like I said, any questions you have, I'm super informal. Cindy, I'd encourage you at any point if you want to interrupt me. Definitely, feel free to do that if there's something that's timely, or we can sort of hold that until the end too. So right out of the gate, very, very important, is when you think about non-cash assets overall, you think about sort of influent investors' assets, and cash only represents, at the sort of peak of this, is about 6 to 8% of their overall assets. It's dinky. When you look at that overall census household, so household net worth census, it's about 3%. You then jump down and you see, and this number keeps moving in a good way, so I'm not complaining. This is probably closer to 38 trillion now, maybe even 40 trillion of aggregate stock market value, publicly traded stock. But when you think about then the non-cash market, by definition, it's not cash, but by my definition, I'm also not considering publicly traded stock. So we're really talking about all private stock, all private real estate, crypto, collectibles, oil and gas, all these other types of assets that you own and your clients own beyond cash or beyond publicly traded stock. And so it's about double that of the entire liquid, if you will, public stock market. You then think about the total donations made in the last year. These are from individuals sort of alone, not corporations, foundations, et cetera. But when you think about that, it's only about 6 to 8% of all of those donations would be in these non-cash forms. So it's actually very, very low. Said another way, 90, 88% or so, 88 to 90% are basically in the form of cash, all things being equal. So that's going to change today, I will assure you. Now, a lot of these gifts are actually occurring and sort of hidden in plain sight. So as a quick example, if I'm on the plane and I don't want to talk to the person, I'm a life insurance agent, or I could buy the Bose headsets. I'm too cheap. I'm not going to do it, but I could do the noise canceling headset. Dr. Bose went to MIT, got his PhD from MIT, taught at MIT, built a pretty good business called the Bose Corporation. And I want to say it was either 2012 or 2014, gave 50.1% of the Bose Corporation to MIT. Like, oh, that's kind of a neat gift. It is kind of neat. They estimate that between about 1.3 and 1.4 billion dollars, one donation, privately held C Corp. When Cindy mentioned the collaboration of other community foundations, there are roughly about 850 across the country. Again, you've got 2 of some of the best in your region. But the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation received the entire Kansas City Royals baseball team, the whole team. The Tulsa Community Foundation received over $3.5 billion in oil and gas and cable company interests. You think this is a joke? I could go on another 30 minutes talking about all the other ones that are occurring, again, sort of hidden in plain sight. Another quick example is I was doing a talk. I can't remember. I think I was in Wyoming. I can't remember. But it was their state bar association. I was going to do the talk over lunch. Fine. About 9 that morning, there was a press release, and you all know this now, but the Patagonia CEO is giving his entire business to charity, thought to be between about $3.5 and $4 billion private business interests. So this is not like, oh, I heard my cousin did one of these 18 years ago. We literally do one of these transactions every day, literally one per day. So this is not esoteric. This is not, to be blunt, like people who are on platforms doing speeches and they have lots of charts. And then you say, yeah, but how many are you actually doing? Oh, we do like 1 or 2 a year. These are happening in an exponential way, in particular in the last 5 to 6 years. So we're going to go through some of the reasons why there are 2. Now, I love this chart. Who can't? It's super colorful. And so what happens is the Visual Capitalist team, we're not part of them, but I sort of plucked this and cited their work, took a nasty Federal Reserve data set, and it's household data, broken down by balance sheet average assets. Very interesting. So hopefully my little pointer here you can see, this would be the $10,000 net worth household tier. And this is how they had statistical significance. I have no earthly idea, but the billion dollar household net worth tier. Now, right out of the gate, Huge nugget. I just talked about it on the first bullet point of the last slide. Everything that we've ever learned in life is green is good. Green means go. Green good. Green here bad. Bad, bad, bad. Green cash. So even at the $10,000 net worth, household net worth level, I can't do the exact visual percentage there, but that looks like 5%, 6%. That's kind of what I talked about in the last bullet point. And you can see that's the highest it is. It goes down rapidly where it's dinky and then gets dinkier as you go down. This is where 88% of all gifts in this country come from. Here. Big nugget. Cash, bad. Everything else, good. The holy grail of charitable planning is using that capital gain, long-term capital gain asset with the most appreciation. Why not cash? Smallest piece of the pie for everybody, the least tax effective way to make a gift, and it hurts their lifestyle the most when they make a gift. So where do 88% of this gifts in this country come from? This little green area. That makes 0 cents, as in 0, 0. Now for small gifts, obviously, it's easy, make the gift that way. But for larger gifts, like to your community foundations, lifetime, life event type gifts, the real estate sale, the business sale, the public stock sale, one big transaction, one big deduction, and then you're able to make then those grants over time, over generations, anonymously, all the things that you know in terms of the value propositions of community foundations can be done with long-term capital gain assets. So that's the first big nugget. Then let's wiggle across. Whoever did this visualization loved blue. Clearly that's their favorite color. We got dark blue, we'll say another way, darkest blue, next darkest blue, next darkest blue, blue with lines in it, lightest blue. So lots of blues. They could have thrown a pink in there. They could have thrown a purple in there. They went with blue evidently. But let's talk about the darkest blue. So even at the $1 million net worth tier, and you can see how rapidly this goes up. This goes down, this goes up. Then you see, what is that? That's business interests. Oh, I know, that's like public stock. No, that's the lightest blue. I'm actually surprised it's that small. Now, to be fair, there are mutual funds, this light green and light blue, so you'd sort of mush that. You have then fixed income investments. You have managed assets. So you sort of take from this all the way over. Obviously, we're talking about, let's say, more the $10 million mark. Here to there, that's pretty chunky. Still, the darkest blue, on average, swamps out all of that. The darkest blue are private business interests. C Corp, S Corp, LLC, LP. Private business interests. Very, very important. Second, the next darkest blue is commercial and investment real estate. So you see real estate here. Oh, that's like their house. Nope. Their house is up here. Primary residence, the rustish reddish. You can see how quickly that drops over time. Even at the $10 million mark, I think as I'm eyeballing this, it looks like the commercial and investment real estate as part of the portfolio is larger than the primary residence on average. Huge nugget. So important. If you don't know anything else the rest of the day, other than cash, but everything else good, I don't care. You're going to get your CE credits. Gigantic nugget coming. I'm sitting in Jacksonville, Florida today. It's afternoon, by the way, already, so it's getting there for you too. If I'm in Salina, Kansas, the last 3 weeks I've been in Houston, San Antonio, DC, Fargo, and Indianapolis. I don't care where I am. I don't care where I am. The most charitably inclined people always, not sometimes, always, privately held business wealth, real estate wealth, always. What do privately held business people own? I don't know. That's a trick question. They own private businesses. What do real estate people own? I don't know. That's trickier. Real estate. What do they give? They give cash. Oh my God. This gets crazier. Somehow, some way, I have no idea how this worked out in the laws of the universe. What assets have the lowest cost basis and most highly long-term capital gain appreciation? What for Greater Tacoma and all of Seattle area, what would be the average basis per share of every S Corp, LLC, C Corp. I know what it is. It's 52 cents. It's always 52 cents a share. That's kind of a joke. Not really. I don't see many privately held business basis more than 2%. Crazy rare to be over 2%. Wait a minute. If they sell that, there's going to be long-term capital gains tax. That's interesting. And wait a minute. These are the people that are the most charitably inclined. They want to give back to their places that they view as home, that they've raised their family, they've built their businesses, they go to religious services there. They want to give back to that community that's helped them be successful. Maybe they're doing business succession planning. That's why they're the most charitable. And also, what do you do with real estate? CPAs on the phone. You depreciate it. What does it mean to depreciate it? You're lowering your adjusted tax basis every single year until such point in the time in the future it is what? Zero. Zippo. Zero for the depreciable portion. So if I have in the greater Seattle area a triplex that I bought 30 years ago, and I've had it rental, your home prices in Tacoma, they've gone up a lot. I get it. We do tons of real estate in that area. And the basis is going what? Down until such point in the future for the most charitably inclined person who owns real estate, they now have an asset, ding, 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 with the lowest cost basis, zero for the depreciable portion. And if they were to sell it, it'd be all long-term capital gain. This is a gigantic nugget. The very people in this country who are the most charitably inclined, always, just so happen to have the exact assets with the lowest cost basis inherently and the largest capital gain. I was at the Atlanta Community Foundation for a long time. We had Coca-Cola, we had UPS, we had Delta, we had all these Fortune 500 businesses. We did almost zero with them, almost zero. We had two C-suite donors. Because if they're promoted, they go to Chicago and they give $10,000 to Chicago for United Way to be part of their de Tocqueville Society. And when they're demoted, they go to Des Moines or something and they give $10,000 for de Tocqueville there. It's not home to them. Your community foundations fit best for places that are for people and for philanthropists and generational philanthropists where it is home. They want to impact that specific region. And the people that want to do that, private business wealth and real estate wealth. So gigantic nugget. I hit that horse like 37 times, but it's so important to understand that people are the most charitable, have the best, most tax optimal assets to give. Now, these assets, again, are exponentially increasing. So Cindy mentioned in the intro that I created a charity, a National Donor Advised Fund, that takes in these types of non-cash assets. There are two evil competitors we have, and they're super nice, and we talk all the time. And your community foundations do tons and tons and tons of this directly. That's not the point of this slide. The point of this slide is the three of us that only focus on non-cash gifts, not cash, not publicly traded securities, in 2010 the three of us mushed, we're about $100 million in 1 year of these non-cash gifts. Not too bad. You see the chart. I have not added 2022. I've got to do that. I'm super lazy. I have to find my template that I did for this original Excel graph. The point is this: in 2022, the three of us combined raised $3.84 billion. $3.84 billion in 2022. These aren't estate gifts. These aren't even life income gifts like charitable remainder trust, charitable gift annuities. These are outright lifetime gifts, major gifts. So by my math, if we raised roughly 100 million, the three of us combined in 2010, by 2022, that's 12 years. 12 years later, we raised 38 times that amount. So when we talk about exponential growth, I would define that as exponential growth. You look right at the 990s and see all of that. You get the point. The real point I'm driving home is we think about all these retirees, people retiring, baby boomers retiring every day. I don't know how many it is. It's some gigantic number. You can look at Google. It's some huge number. Where I come back, however, and say, what are they retiring from? They're retiring from their private businesses that they built up over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. They're retiring from their real estate portfolios that they've done, kind of not a joke, 15 1031 exchanges, taking that duplex to the quadruplex to the apartments to multiple apartments to the hotel. Now they're 78 going, I'm kind of done with the tax-free exchanges. I've been rolling basis depreciating, rolling basis depreciating, rolling basis depreciating. So now my entire portfolio has almost zero basis. And now I'm 78. So at some point I'm going to sell, and I'm also charitably inclined. That's what's driving this. Merger and acquisition activity, any kind of IPO, financing round, any of these types of exits around business interests or real estate interests trigger for the charitably inclined, which so happen to be private business and real estate owners, these types of transactions. You can also see, at least for us, it averages between about 4.5 and 4.7 million per donation. We do one per day, but you can see if the three of us combined, mushed, it's about 2 million per donation. So these are not small. Very quickly, this is just for our foundation. Again, the Seattle Foundation does a ton. Greater Tacoma Foundation does a ton. So you call them anytime any of your clients wants to do anything in that area, creating any kind of fund with your community foundations. This is just a sampling of what we see in terms of actual activity. So for our National Donor Advised Fund in 2021, you can see it's about 261 donations, just under 1.2 billion. Very important call out, about 2/3 of that would be in, actually more by volume, 2/3 by number, business interests. C Corp, S Corp, super low here because a ton of these LLCs elect to be taxed as S Corps. Legally, they're LLCs. From a tax perspective, they're S Corps. So this weirdly would be about 50-50-50 if you sort of recategorized those. You can see there about 20%-ish would be in real estate in every form you can imagine. We're going to go through that on another slide. Cryptocurrency, pretty small for 2021 for obvious reasons. So you can kind of see the rest of this. By 2023, interestingly, it went from 261 to 161. So actually the numbers went way down, but the average went way up. So it was about 6.8 million per donation on average. So the amount was still about 1.1 billion. The call out here is that the proportion is almost the same. It's been the same for 15 years. 2/3 are private business interest in these various forms, roughly 20% in real estate. Cryptocurrency was only about 14 million. Last year, I think your Seattle Foundation and Greater Tacoma are doing a lot in the crypto too. We've done, I think, almost about 60 million in crypto in the last month. We did over 120 million in crypto in the last 90 days of last year. So that has gone way, way up. But proportionately, still, the private business interests are still very strong. So I just want to call that out, less about sort of what we're doing and more about these are actually happening at very large volume for those donors who are charitably inclined with these kinds of assets. So now let's jump to the types. So now we're going to go through some specific types. We're going to go through the tax, the 5-minute tax seminar on one slide, and then we'll go into the sort of reasons why some of these at least are initially declined. So non-cash types, I've already mentioned a number of these, but I want to call out big nugget number, I think 4. I think we're on 4. Big nugget number 4. I will say giant nugget. Giant nugget number 4. Too many of you as advisors and too many donors think that you have to be super charitable. You have to be like the Patagonia CEO giving the whole thing away. Well, Dr. Bose didn't give the whole thing away. He gave a 50.1% interest away. 75% of the gifts that we work on are not the majority interest. Said more simply, it's a minority interest. I love you, charity, not 100% worth, 5% worth, 5% of my business, 2% of my business, 12% of my business. Or for real estate, I want to give an apartment complex, we'll assume there's no mortgage, I want to give a 21% interest, undivided interest in my apartment complex. Okay, we simply become a 21% minority owner in that apartment complex. It's a big nugget because too many people think, oh my gosh, I love charity, but I'm going to give them the whole apartment complex. You don't have to. 3%, 10%, you dial that to whatever proportional amount that you wish to be able to use that charitable income tax deduction, which we will discuss, to be able to wash out some of the gain on the amount that you didn't give away. You're doing it with the lowest cost basis, most highly appreciated long-term capital gain asset you have. That's the holy grail. Doing it at the very time that you're going to have an income spike. And now you're able to basically bunch all of these deductions into 1 year. Many cases, this is being used for donor advised funds. And then the donor advised fund, obviously, then can make grants, hopefully locally or regionally, to the organizations that either the community foundation has identified as having the most impact, around particular areas are obviously based on the donor's interest as well. That's how it works. Not super complicated. Not enough people are doing it. And when they find out about it, like, oh my gosh, I'd love to be able to do this to pre-fund all my future charitable giving, maybe for retirement and maybe for the next generation and maybe even for the generation after that, using this life event as a way to do that tax optimally. Literally redirecting money from federal and state income tax, literally, into their charitable bucket. That's what they're doing. So, as I mentioned, I highlighted some of the assets that we work on, and that's why I have privately held interest first. It's 2/3 of what we see. 2006, it was the same. 2009, during the Great Recession, it was the same. It's been the same for 20 years. So privately held business interests are sort of the lowest fruit that are the most common form of these types of non-cash gifts. Now, again, I'm glossing through lots of stuff. I know I am. That's why I have this 400+ page book. That one chapter is just C Corp. It's about a 35, 40 page chapter, just C Corp. Another one, just S Corp. So I'm glossing through some things, but thematically, these are very conducive, most always, for charitable giving during life and or potentially for life income type gifts as well, like charitable remainder trusts or charitable gift annuities. 20% would be real estate. Now I'm going to start expanding your brain right out of the gate. You all want to go down to weird stuff. I already know it, and we're going to get there. So everybody calm down. So real estate. So we don't do a lot at all with primary residences because of the Section 121 exclusion. On the West Coast, we sort of see more of that than anywhere else, just because there's been such massive appreciation, sort of the Washington down to California corridor in particular. Encumbered versus unencumbered. Encumbered means debt bad. That's all you need to know. Blah, debt super bad. So we do roughly 80 to 90 real estate donations a year. Maybe 3 have debt. So no debt, good. There are multiple ways of being able to sort of carve out, remove the debt. I don't have time to sort of go into that now, but generally speaking, no debt, good, debt, bad. Then we talk about international versus domestic. So I want to start expanding your thinking. So we currently own 36,000 acres in Panama, Belize, and Costa Rica. I took in a 50% interest in an Afghanistan farm. I'm going to say that again because you didn't hear me. A 50% interest in an Afghanistan farm. Can't make that up. The issue is that the person was joining the first Trump administration. Not to make this political, doesn't matter to me. So joining there, he was going to then be working with basically a negotiation with the Taliban that evidently did not go very well. But he had to divest very quickly of any Afghani interest. So all I'm thinking, and all you're thinking, I'm an amateur mind reader, you're thinking the same thing I am. You're thinking, that's a poppy farm. That's opium, heroin, poppy. That's all I'm thinking. So like, no, it's weed. I'm like, okay, I want to see like lots of pictures of weed. Wheat. That's all I need in my world. So long story short, the other owner was an uncle. So we were able to get an Afghanistan qualified appraiser. That was super easy, by the way. And then we're able to sell then to the uncle at the full fair market value based on the 50% interest. We've done a office building in Hong Kong right before the big riot. So we were able to sell that through before that, thank God. And we just sold last spring 170 acres in Uganda. So you may be aware there's like Paris, Texas, and Rome, New York. This is Uganda. So 170 acres, it was offered to a university. They're like, I don't even know where to start with that. So we were able to sort of work with that. And today we got a referral from US Virgin Islands for a basically 40% interest in a hotel on the beach. I hope I'm expanding your thinking. You own these weird things. Your client owns these weird things. We have restricted stock. Won't talk about that really at all, other than if it's over $10,000, you need to have an appraisal. Nobody does this. So if you have Microsoft stock and it's fully tradable, you don't need an appraisal. You can give it to your Seattle Foundation. You can give it to your Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. And as you know, the deduction is simply the mean or the average of the high and the low for the day of the trade. Instead, if that's got a 6-month, 144 lockup, well, that's not the same thing. If there's any kind of restrictions at all, if it's over $10,000, you have got to have a qualified appraiser completing a qualified appraisal. Tangible personal property, we get a lot of these calls, getting a ton of calls about gold right now for obvious reasons. So this is very complex area. Don't have the time to sort of go through it. The general rule is that if you give any tangible personal property, you can touch it and move it. So artwork, we've done 2 gifts of wine, can't make that up. Jewelry, antiques, anything like that. If you're giving it to a charity that can put it to a related use, textbook example, artwork, museum, they hang. Their exempt purpose is public display and education of art. You're good. Fair market value deduction based on the appraisal. If you gave it to that same museum and they said, thank you so much, we're going to do a silent auction next week, not good, because their exempt purpose is not to be an auctioneer. And so in that case, they would say it's being used for an unrelated use. And therefore, the deduction is limited to the lower of the fair market value or the basis. So you just have to be very careful. There's nothing, and you think this is a joke. This is not a joke. I would rather deal with an S corporation in Ireland with ostriches in it than a bag of coins. There is nothing more complicated than coins. Even the value, is it the denominational value, the number on the coin? Is it the collectible numismatic value? Is it the intrinsic metallic value based on the strike price of the precious metals within the coin as of that date? So that it gets very, very tricky. So tangible personal property, maybe 1% of what we do each year. And then weird stuff. So I'm not going to go through all the weird stuff. So important. This looks like, oh, this came up, this will be funny, I'll stick it on a slide. Kind of is true. I want to take it one step further. Every single one of these were completed donations. So it wasn't like, oh, this is funny, I'll stick it on a slide. It was, these were actual assets donated through our donor advised fund. Seattle's probably got a bunch of examples too, and Greater Tacoma as well, of completed donations. So you can see here, quarter horse, blah, 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 blah. Do a lot in hedge fund carry as an example. NFL team, so it was a 4% interest in the Minnesota Vikings Football Club, LLC in 2006. So a 4%, not the whole interest, 4% interest. Dirt, we actually didn't take that as a donation, but that actually was a donation made to the National Mall. And then we were engaged to find, not a joke, a qualified appraiser to complete a qualified appraisal per cubic yard of dirt for 38 truckloads that a real estate developer donated the dirt to the National Mall after Superstorm Sandy basically took out all the dirt. So they needed a ton of fill dirt. That was almost as hard as getting the Afghanistan farm appraised. That's not a joke either. Dead animals, one was never living, but we literally took in the sculpture of the bull on Wall Street. That's called Charging Bull #1. Went through a donor advised fund. And the other one was 88 stuffed taxidermied animals out of an estate that they were trying to give to the Hartford Foundation, one of the peers of your community foundation, obviously in Connecticut. And horribly, a Hartford life insurance executive went to Africa, killed like a third of the continent, never missed a shot, evidently, brought back 88 animals. This is not a joke, built a 5,400 square foot addition on his house to house the 88 animals. Fully standing African elephant, 2 black rhinos, and 85 friends. Was not married, not sure why. But he was trying to give that to the community foundation. They're like, no, 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 no. We're going to have PETA camped on our lawn with fire torches, and this is not good. So we had to basically try to work with them in the estate to try to get all that sold. So a lot, Cabell Outdoors bought a lot. Some Greek museum, super weird, showed up and bought a bunch of those too. So the point of this slide is to take your brain of what you thought the possibilities were when you think about that colorful balance sheet by household net worth tier and say, not only is it real estate, now we have real estate that is, again, in Central America or in Africa. That is possible. So if you have a U.S. donor, they're able to get a full fair market value deduction for that so long as they meet the tax criteria, which is what we're going to talk about now. So non-cash seminar. What is this? Cash bad, everything else good. I've already hit that. I'm going to hit that one again. 2, capital gain property receives a fair market value deduction generally, and the elimination of capital gains tax if donated to a public charity like your community foundations. Now, I think you all know that. Oh yeah, it's kind of like Amazon stock. It is exactly like Amazon or Nike stock or Boeing stock. It's exactly like that. The only difference is the appraisal component and the turbulence, to be fair, of how long does it take to make a transfer of Boeing stock to the Seattle Foundation, or for a unrestricted fund or field adventure fund or designated fund or scholarship fund or donor advised fund at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. It takes like 2 minutes. DTC electronic transfer, stock from the donor over to the community foundation, they sell. This is different. And I get that it's different. But from a tax perspective, these are all long-term capital gain assets. That's it. Real estate, same thing. C Corp, same thing. Crypto, same thing. So it works the same way is the point. Any of this donated to a private foundation, more technically and specifically, a non-operating private foundation, more technically or more colloquially known as a family foundation, all you need to know is bad, because that's an automatic basis deduction. You've got excise tax, Chapter 42 rules. You have to do appraisals each year, 5% payout. Ugh, that never happens. Never, 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 unless somebody's made a big mistake and then somebody's getting sued. So these types of assets end up in public charities, in particular community foundations, and in particular donor advised funds. Because if you want to have fun, I'm being sarcastic, you say, donor, client, who do you love? Oh, I love these 4 charities. Okay, we're going to take your farm and we're going to give a 25% interest to each of these 4 charities. You will never pull that off. Never. 25% interest deed transfers to 4. There are 4 different gift acceptance committees, 4 different appraisals, 4 different processes, 4 different 8283s, 4 different 82. Oh my! I'll buy you a pony and cookies, and I'll buy you all kinds. You'll never pull that off. Versus 1 donation to your community foundation, to a donor advised fund, 1 transfer, 1 process, 1 sale. And then once it's sold, you know how this works, then they can make recommendations, anonymously or not, to those same 4 charities that they wish to give, either currently and or over time. It's magical. Donor advised funds put on this earth for these types of donations. I told you that was less than 5 minutes, and it was. So now we're going to talk about the appraisal consideration. So what does that mean? So when I talk about, oh, it's fair market value, be real careful about this. So this is a qualified appraiser. I underlined that on purpose. Do not mess around with that definition. It's in publication 561. You can put it in ChatGPT. It'll pop out the little checklist. Not a complex checklist. Look at the checklist. Completing a qualified appraisal, underlined on purpose, defined in publication 561. There's a checklist. 13-part USPAP appraisal. I've got 12 parts. That's pretty good, right? You're dead. 13 parts. Not a joke. You do a foot fault on the qualified appraisal, 0 deduction. 0. Do not mess around with qualified appraiser, qualified appraisal. It's not that complicated. Just look at the checklist. There is one appraisal beautiful appraisal, 60 pages, $2.5 million, all these comps, pictures, so pretty pictures on all the comps. She forgot to include her EIN number. Her EIN, her tax ID as an appraiser. Sends that in on audit. IRS comes back. Yeah, so many pages, so many pretty pictures. Can't see your EIN number. Oh, oops, sorry. Like, where does she fax that? We don't think you're fully appreciating what we just said. If it requires 13 parts and she has 12, that's not a qualified appraisal. Not a qualified appraisal, 0 deduction. 0. Same thing just happened at tax court. They forgot to put in basis in an 8283 box. The basis was 0. Like, that's 0. Who cares? I'm getting a fair market value anyway. It was long-term capital gain. Lost on appeal, lost at tax court. 0 deduction. Don't mess around. Look at the stupid checklist. It's not complicated, but it's almost like if I get on a plane and the pilot's like, yeah, I think I remember all this stuff. I want to see a clipboard. I want to see a checklist. I want to see checking. I don't want to get on the plane and have them wondering what it is. Quite simple. Look at the checklist. The donation can be appraised as early as 60 days prior to it. 61 days is close, 0 deduction. 60 days. Don't mess around with that. 60 days is the earliest point. The latest is when the donor files his or her tax return for the year of the gift, which is why I'm doing massive numbers of qualified appraisals for cryptocurrency and life insurance for the next week, because it's super annoying that everybody waits until the last possible second to get all these appraisals done. These could have been, and I'm doing them. I did one yesterday, was donated late January of 2024. It still qualifies because I'm having to do the qualified appraisal and doing it retroactive to the actual gift date of January 2024. Still qualifies. So that's the latest point in time. Too many advisors like, oh gosh, would love to do this gift at year end. There's no way we can get an appraisal done quickly enough. You don't have to. Doesn't matter. You can wait until after the appraisal is, I'm sorry, after the donation is made. And even if a donation were made today, you would have until October 15th, assuming extensions, to have the appraisal completed. Donor completes the Form 8283, more specifically, the appraiser does, and the donee organization does. And then the charity is charged with filling out what's known as the 8282, which is known as the tattletale form. It lets the IRS know what the property sold for gross if they sell it within 3 years. So if your Seattle Foundation receives, crypto, or they get, real estate or whatever, and they sell it, 2.5 years later, then they're letting the IRS know, hey, this is what it sold for as, again, the gross contract price. Some considerations on the appraiser. So the appraiser post 2006 Pension Protection Act can be, say this 5 times fast, personally penalized for a percentage of the puffery. That's hard to say. So if the appraiser puffs it, inflates the value, oh, it's my third cousin, I can get this appraisal at $1 million, even though I know it's only going to sell for 400,000. Sounds good. First, that's going to be blown out of the water on audit. Second, the IRS can personally penalize the appraiser for that, what's called a gross or substantial misstatement of value, the puffery. Second, I told you 2/3 to 3/4 of all the gifts that we work on are minority interest gifts. What does that mean? That most include some kind of discount. Now, these are not like typical intra-family discounts, defective trusts and, slats, blah, blah, blah. Those might be 25 to 35%-ish discounts. We normally see like that 5 to 12% discounts. All things being equal, there can be some things that you can use to help mitigate some of this, which we don't really have time to go through today. The timing of when the appraisal is done can help. I'll talk about that on a case study. But also sometimes we include put options as part of the gift agreement, which then actually can help us make a market at full undiscounted value. So in many cases, the appraiser might mitigate or remove a marketability discount. So there's certain things that can be done, but the point is there are very likely going to be some level of at least discussed discounts for minority interests. Key point 2, the donor is responsible for selecting, engaging, and paying for the appraiser. That's not the charity. The charity is just saying, thank you so much for 30 Bitcoin that you gave us in January of 2024. Now you have to go off and get the separate appraisal. So those are the appraisal considerations. So now we're going to go through at least why 8. Now this is where you might be saying, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. It's pretty good. Everybody will be doing this nonstop. They should, but there again are certainly some challenges and other considerations. So we'll go through these. At least initially, when these are offered to charities, again, not your sophisticated Seattle Foundation or Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, but when they're offered to them initially, that some of these again are otherwise rejected. So the first thing I want to talk about is the tax and legal complexity. What does that mean? I already talked about it's more difficult. Doing real estate to a community foundation is not a DTC transfer. You've got deeds, you've got potentially inspections and title and survey. What about with private stock? You've got operating agreements or partnership agreements, potential capital calls, K1s. You've got, shareholders agreements, bylaws, and articles. That's just more complex. It is. So that's sort of the first thing. Within that, however, there are 2 big boogeymen. There are more boogeymen, but the 2 big ones are, 1, prearranged sale issues. It's a crazy rule. I get it and I understand it. Other humans, donors, your clients, do not understand this at all because it doesn't make sense. The rule is that when the charity receives the donation, if it's transferred by deed or if it's an assignment of the shares, when the charity receives that non-cash asset, was there already a pre-existing definitive purchase and sale agreement that the donor or someone else has already signed and negotiated, such that the charity no longer has full dominion and control over the gift and is in essence forced to sell under a contract, usually with lots of signatures and lots of dates, that the donor or someone else has already executed? If that is the case, bad, real bad. So under assignment of income, technically what occurs is the donation is made, but all the long-term capital gains tax the donor thought he was getting out of all comes back on the donor phantom, because you don't even own the asset anymore. Phantom tax. Donors love that. And then everybody gets sued. It's not good. So many donors think, and I get that we get about 8 to 10 referrals every day, 2 minimum every single day. It'll drive you nuts. 2 every single day. Okay, I'm super charitable. I've got this business. I've been thinking about selling it for a while. Great news. About 3 weeks ago, we just did a purchase and sale agreement. It is more than I ever thought possible, and I cannot wait to give 5% of that business away or 10% of that business away. And even better news, we got tons of time. It's not supposed to have a closing until February of next year. It doesn't matter when the closing is. It matters when there's a purchase and sale agreement. You have Ferguson, Blake, Dickinson, now Owenshide. All these cases, all these tax court cases are all around this issue about how far is too far. And it does definitely come down to facts and circumstances. That gets very subjective. Sort of when is it, whether it's a more likely than not sort of scenario, that gets very subjective. The donor's definition of that, I will guarantee, will be different than the IRS's definition of that. So the point is, anything around prearranged sale, be very, very careful that we do about maybe 2/3 of ours are in letter of intent stage. Some attorneys would say, don't even do that. Those would be very conservative in my view, but I get it. The earlier in the process, the better. But a letter of intent typically will have the word non-binding on every other page, which obviously is good. The second big boogeyman, so the first one is a prearranged sale under assignment of income issues. The second big boogeyman is what we call excess benefit transactions. Is the donor or anybody in the donor's sphere getting any direct or indirect benefit personally in making the donation? And if so, also super bad. And I call that the coffee cup rule, because you can get what's called an insubstantial benefit that can come back to the donor of basically it's inflation adjusted, which makes the math more difficult, but it's like $14.80. It's about what a nice coffee cup would be. Anything over that, real bad. And the charity becomes the lightning rod for potentially facilitating this excess benefit type transaction. So those are the 2 really big ones. There are a bunch of other ones in here for tax and legal complexity, but those are the ones that kill most of them. Is, the donor's trying to get something back, or try to sell it to the son for less than value, or trying to do some note back to let's say a personal trust at less than fair market interest rates or AFR rates, as an example. We have other issues where they would say, oh, I'm a realtor, I'll just list it myself. No, you will not, because now you're getting a commission based on the sale. I'm a hedge fund manager. No big deal. I'll give you a limited partnership interest, but I'm taking my 2 and 20. No, you're not. That all has to be carved out. So excess benefit you have to be very careful about. Then we have environmental issues. This is what most every charity freaks out over environmental issues. Generally speaking, not a big deal. Easy for me to say, but I would always say is use common sense. If you drive out to a farm and there are lots of those big blue plastic tanks everywhere, there's nothing good ever in those blue tanks. Oh, it's milk. It's never milk. It's chemicals. And if you're driving up and you see stuff like dripping out of the tank and there are rainbows all in the soil and dead animals all piled up, you go, I don't think we're going to take this thing. So you don't have to go crazy with it. If it's a brand new house built 3 years ago, which one community foundation, not one of yours, wanted to do a phase 3 environmental on, oh my God. It's a brand new house. It's on the 6th fairway. It's like a $3 million house. You're good. It wasn't like a garbage dump before then. Oh, we have to make sure. It's like, okay. There are people who live among us called environmental appraisers, and you know them because they have clipboards. They love clipboards. And they'll hop out of their car and they'll say, do I see anything? Check, 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 check. Do I smell anything? Check, 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 check. That's called a phase 1 environmental. $600 to $800-ish. Takes about 10 days. Charities will talk about this for months. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? What if it glows in the daytime? It glows at nighttime and people are growing 3 eyes downstream. It's like, so to be very careful about, I'm not saying to do short shrift, but that's sort of a non-issue. I've done this 34 years. I think I've had 2 environmental issues in 34 years. a lot more around this excess benefit, and the assignment of income happens twice a day. Management issues. Whatever the donor is having to do, the charity is going to have to do too. So what does that mean? That means that the donor saying, which I had a call, and it was from a guy who just met with his CPA. It was early December. It wasn't late December, but he said, I own 3 quadruplexes, 12 units. This was in Atlanta, 12 units. He goes, 8 of the units, they pay great. 2 of them are slow payers. So you'll get paid, but spin the wheel as to win. He said 1, the last guy moved out and just basically just blew out the place. He goes, it is totally unleasable. He goes, I'm so sick of this. He was mid-70s. He goes, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And he said, in my final one, he goes, the final straw, because I said, why do you want to make this gift? And he tells me all this stuff within like 2 minutes. He said, the final straw is, I don't think the guy is running drugs out of the place. He goes, but the cops do. So the cops are trying to get my permission to basically do a stakeout and do some like video recording in this area because they think he's running drugs. And then he says, I'm too old to deal with this. You guys want it? No. I don't want the cops calling me. People must, I swear, people must think that charities have some kind of magic wand in some drawer I have yet to be able to find that just poofs things into cash. You're giant albatross. I'm looking for a giant albatross. Throw it on my back. I love dealing with drug dealers. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. So these are management issues. Also not a joke that any charity that gets an apartment complex better make sure that that is insured the second they get it. Because this has happened to us twice. I can't make it up. Twice. People get naked and drunk and jump off of stuff. Don't know why. I'm guessing I should have reversed that. They probably get drunk first and then naked and then jump. I don't know, but somehow that's happened twice. Neither one was fatal, so I'm not being bad. But seriously, it's like, okay, so are we insured for that? So these are sort of the other duties as assigned that most charities and finance and business offices aren't super eager to take on. Like, oh, sure, we'll manage an apartment complex. And then I always like when people say, oh, just get a property manager. Anybody that's never owned real estate says that. Is it important to get one? Yes. But now you're managing the property manager. Like they're still getting naked and jumping off stuff. Yes. So it just adds another, layer of, people that you can commiserate with, basically. This is the big one. Not for Greater Tacoma, not for Seattle Foundation. They're able to take on new opportunities. It goes through like butter. Everything works perfectly always. It doesn't work that way with us either. And so, but for them, they're great. For other charities, this kills more deals than everything because some of you may even be part of it and you don't even realize it. So all charities, to me, super weird, have gift acceptance committees. It's like there's a law that they have to have a gift acceptance committee. On paper, makes perfect sense. In reality, horrible. They always have 4 to 6 people. I don't know why. It has to be 4 to 6. 4 to 6 people. So there are 4 to 6 people that can be the volunteers to look at, sort of vet, and consider doing due diligence on any of these new opportunities that come up sort of on my non-cash asset type page. So is it real estate? Is it S-Corp? Is it in Uganda? Whatever. Makes perfect sense. What do charities do? First, they'll put people on there that are super successful. That makes no sense. You think it does, it doesn't. Because what do super successful people always do? If I've got 4 to 6 people who are super successful, this is not a joke. They're always traveling. Always. I'm not joking. How long would it take the average charity, not your community foundation, the average charity to get a quorum together of 4 to 6 people? This assumes they're still alive. That's also not a joke. And it also assumes the charity remembers who the people are because it comes up so infrequently. And I'll guarantee you 1 or 2 have already passed away or they've moved away. I've done this a long time. That's what happens. But let's say in our magical unicorn Pegasus world that all of them are alive and they're all local and they're all sort of ready to say, oh yeah, let's try to get, if let's say you got 6 people, we need 4 people on the phone. I'm not saying in person, don't go crazy. I'm saying on the phone, how long will it take you to get 4 people on the phone to discuss the gift opportunity? I've done this a long time. It's 2.5 to 3 weeks. 2.5 to 3 weeks. You will never make a decision to accept that gift through a gift acceptance committee before the 4th meeting. Ever. ever. Half the donors bail after the first meeting when they get all the questions that come back to them after 3 weeks have gone by, and then they get this list of 25 questions, half of which are good, half of which are just crazy questions. Fourth meeting, that's the earliest. On average, it's 5 meetings. So you do 5 meetings times 3 weeks, and you're not doing it as soon as you do it because you don't know how long it's going to take the donor to answer the questions. On average, it's 3.5 to 4 months to come back with maybe a no, because that just works great for everybody. So what do you think would have happened when the minority interest holder of the Minnesota Vikings Football Club, LLC, who wants to give a 4% interest to us, gave a donation to us? And I said, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity. We're going to get back to you in 3.5 to 4 months and let you know. And then he would say, you've got until Thursday. Because Thursday, the majority holder is going to have a binding purchase and sale agreement. And now I'm done relative to the the prearranged sale issue. This kills more than everything combined, is the charity's internal process with these types of opportunities. And the final thing is there are 4 things you never, ever, 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 ever want to take, ever, ever. Number 1, ever, timeshares. For the love of God, stop with the timeshares. If you have clients that go, oh, we'll give them the charity. No, stop. No timeshare has ever appreciated in value ever since the beginning of time. So why are they trying to give it to a charity? Because they can't sell it. We don't have a magic wand. If they can't sell it, we can't sell it. It goes on your name for the fractional interest on the deed, and now our name's on the fractional interest on the deed. Okay, now I can't sell it. I tell every single new development officer, if they're under 30, take the first timeshare that comes up, the first one, because you have stamina. And you're going to take it, and you're going to work it. Not a joke. 5 to 10 hours a week will take at least 3.5 to 4 months. You will always get $628.14. That will be what you will sell it for. It's floating week number 2. I don't care. It's in Hawaii. I don't care. It's a 4-bedroom in Orlando. I don't care. You're going to get $628.14. I've done it before. That's what you're going to get. But I tell everybody as new development officers, it's like a rite of passage. You just do it. You suck it up. You go through, you get your $628 check. You said, I did it. I crossed the finish line. You cash it. And then you will never do a timeshare again. You notch your belt. You're done. If you don't do that when you're like 35 or 40, you'll say, God, I don't really think it's that bad. It's worse. Stop with the timeshares. 2, anything that eats. If it consumes food, not good. We did the quarter horse. I've got some very bad stories that I'm not going to tell because you guys wouldn't like them on how they were disposed of. But don't do any kind of food in terms of living animals. That's not good. We've done feedlot cattle in western Kansas, did a hog, basically a group of hogs, which is super weird for a gift annuity. Ugh, it's weird. Anyway, don't do that. Anything that eats, not good. 3, anything with a steering wheel. Cars, boats, planes got anviled as a charitable opportunity back in 2004. Anviled. Because remember, there used to be what's called the Kelley Blue Book scam. And it was your uncle that had this 1978 Impala with 2 tires on it way back in the back lot of whatever, sort of, a junkyard. But the odometer said there's only 87,000 miles on it. And I don't know, that seems kind of like fair condition. People were kind of a liberal on how they would do that. And so Kelley Blue Book says fair condition Impala, 1978. 80,000 miles on it. That seems like it's worth about $2,700. So then they would take a $2,700 deduction. Remember, you couldn't drive 2 miles across highways in this country without there being billboards marketing this. I mean, it was just massive. The wrecker would come, take the Impala, take it to a scrap metal dealer, and if the charity got $115 from it, that's like a miracle. So the IRS said, that seems like tax fraud. So they just anviled that area. So now it's basically the net of what the charity actually receives, which shut that down real fast. But what most people don't realize is a yoke is a steering wheel and a tiller is a steering wheel. Combines have steering wheels. It's weird. So anything with a steering wheel is a vehicle, and they all fall in under these same rules. So no vehicles. The 4th thing that's worse than all 3 of those, and that takes some doing to be worse, cemetery plots. Stop with the cemetery plots. And some of you might have a clever idea. You don't. But the clever idea is, oh, I know what you can do. You can give it to a faith-based organization or to a hospital for indigent use. Looks good on paper. What's it cost to open a plot? $1,000. What's it cost to close a plot? $1,000. Where's that coming from? Nowhere. So now what does the charity do? They have it on their books forever, because you're never selling an aftermarket cemetery plot. So that's not happening. You're going to think I'm the devil. This is being recorded, whatever. A lot of charities aren't giving their staff raises or bonuses these days. This sounds horrible. You see where I'm going. So if you think about raise and review performance for the person who's doing the best job, who's the oldest on staff, on a present value, use math is a less creepy, present value basis, it's worth more to her than anybody else on staff. Helen ripped the cover off the ball this year. Performance standard, met every one, exceeds expectations, unbelievable. We don't have money to give you. However, before you leave brokenhearted, we can give you the perpetual rest under the big oak tree. You bonus out the cemetery plot. Everybody thinks that's a joke. I've actually had a charity do that, and Helen was very happy to get it. So there you go. That actually can work. So not a joke. All right. So we're going to go through 2 case studies. I think we're good on time. Yes, we are. So this will be about 5 minutes each, and then we'll have a good amount of time for questions too. So first case study, this involves real estate. So this was in Greenville, North Carolina. We had 4 doctors. And the 4 doctors had purchased their medical building where all their patients have been coming. I think it was like 1984 or 85. I don't need to be a CPA. You don't need to be a CPA. What do you think their cost basis was, adjusted basis, in that medical building? 0 for the depreciable portion. 0. They depreciated completely down over that period of time. What was interesting about this is they were very charitably inclined. And this is a bad joke, but I'll say it anyway because it's kind of true. I was able to find 4 charitably inclined doctors. That can take some doing. This is also true, and I can show you the data, and I'm being very serious. If you're in the medical profession, it's the worst per capita giving by far. So there aren't usually a lot of charitably inclined, but interestingly, the ones who are charitable are like crazy hyper charitable. They're doing like Doctors Without Borders and mission trip. It's almost like they're trying to make up for the uncharitableness of the rest of their profession. That's more true than not. But all 4 of these were charitable. They had this building. There were 6 junior doctors. They wanted to sell their practice to the 6 junior doctors, and they wanted to retire. They were all different ages, but they said, the next 2-3 years, we'd like to be able to do that. Every single year, they got a call from a REIT out of Charlotte. So Charlotte, North Carolina, there was a real estate investment trust, and all they did was medical sale leasebacks. They want to buy the building and lease it back. That's all the REIT did. So every year they'd call ready to sell, ready to sell. And I said, no. We have 0 basis. We're going to get killed with capital gains taxes. And the 6 junior doctors said, you better not sell this building out from under us because that's going to mess up our practice purchase. So what did they do? Not super complicated here. They were able to say, well, I tell you what, why don't the junior doctors go out for beer and barbecue? That's what they did in Eastern North Carolina. It was dinner. It wasn't lunch. Went out for dinner. And they said verbally, non-binding, verbally negotiate what a long-term lease, reasonable terms. That's what the REIT wants. That's what the junior doctors want. Reasonable terms as part of the negotiation. So they didn't just do it over one dinner, but it took them like 2-3 weeks. And they said, okay, yeah, okay. So we would be willing now to enter into a lease under those terms with the REIT. And they said, okay, that's interesting. So how is there possibly a way that we could also make a donation of some of this real estate, and also such a way to get some income back for life, if possible, but to make this very tax efficient in terms of the building sale, knowing that we're also then going to be doing subsequent to that, the medical practice sale. So this is not super complicated. There are a lot of boxes. I get it. But they were able to say, look, we're going to take a 20% interest, not 100%, 20% into 4 charitable remainder trusts. They weren't all 7%. I only had so much room. But the point was, you know how these work. You create the charitable trust. You fund the charitable trust. You get an income tax deduction based on age and payout of about 15 to 25% or so. Then, as you know, once it's sold, it can then be reinvested and then would then be able to provide, I have the 7% here, 7% for life. 3 of the doctors were married, so they were joint lives. 1 was not, was single. So they said, yeah. And at this time, actually, it was very important to get this out of the estate for estate tax purposes. So they said, okay, so we're going to do a 20% gift over here. And then we're also going to give 20% to our local community foundation for 4 donor advised funds. So they're going to get a full fair market value deduction for this 1.2 million. We'll talk about the appraisal piece here in a moment. And about a 15 to 25%, we'll say 20% deduction on this going to the charitable remainder trusts. And what just happened? They gave away 40% interest. That means they held back 60%. The math did not work out this way. I wish it did and make for a better story, but it was close. That all the deductions received from this side of the equation almost washed out all the gain for the 60% that they held back. Fairly tax neutral. It was like a 5 to 15% slippage in terms of the gain that they actually had to recognize, not the 100%. They used the lowest cost basis, most highly appreciated long-term capital gain asset they had, the real estate. They were able to get lifetime income. By the way, three of the remainder trusts then poured into the donor advised funds at their local community foundation. One went over to East Carolina Medical University for a professorship that he had created during life over there to top that off as an endowed professorship. All out of their estate for estate tax purposes. For these donor advised funds, this will then pre-fund bunch all of those deductions in the year that they need it to help wash out other gain and other ordinary income first, by the way, to pre-fund all their future retirement giving and potentially even for some of the next generation for these doctors using the donor advised funds to do that. The REIT came in and bought it for $6 million. They don't care if the community foundation owns the whole thing or the doctors own the whole thing or the trustees own the whole, whatever. We want the whole building. We're giving you $6 million. You carve it up however you want, but when we walk away from the settlement table, we own a $6 million building, and then we're going to turn around and immediately execute the long-term lease with the junior doctors. And that's what they did. So it worked very, very well. They then, by the way, the junior doctors ended up buying the rest of the medical practice over I think it was a 5-year or 7-year earnout to be able to almost do more of an installment sale, type recognition on the practice sale. The whole thing was they were trying to smooth out that gain recognition, but this is the way they were able to do it charitably, which worked great. 2 key points here. 1, appraisal. So we talked about the 20% interest in discounting. In this case, this all happened like in February or March. The REIT was supposed to buy it in June or July. It took them forever. I think it was like November when they finally closed. They waited to do the appraisal. Remember I talked about they could wait till October 15th of the next year. They ended up doing it like in January for a gift that they made the prior March. So they made the donation. It was then sold in November. Then the following January, the qualified appraiser said, hey, what am I appraising? Well, you're appraising a 20% interest that basically went to these ward trusts and a 20% interest that went to these donor advised funds. And by the way, there's been a material event and appraisers get all excited. Ooh, what was it? Material event. What was it? Well, it sold for $6 million in November. That appraiser, I think, took like a 3% discount because they were able to say the whole point of the appraisal is to determine what an arm's length transaction would be in the open market. It's all artistic, right? It's all subjective. We're guessing. We're forecasting. Here, there's no guessing or subjectivity or forecasting. It just cleared for $6 million. Ta-da! Now that becomes more of a comp project. I can go further than that. Discounting applies generally for basically comparative market analysis. The income approach, not the market approach, the income approach, basically a derivation of the cap rate for the lease, has no discounting. So if the appraiser just said, you know what, I'm going to take an income approach to derive, again, valuation based on the cap rate, no discounting occurs with an income approach. So there can be multiple ways. We didn't even use a put option here. We could have used a put option. So there are multiple ways of trying to squeeze out justifiably, all up to the appraiser, some of this discounting. The second big nugget that I want to make, this is a really, really big one, really big. The big nugget is that your community foundations allow, in many cases, outside investment management. So in this case, there were 2 financial advisors that were working with then these doctors that were able then to manage these charitable remainder trusts. They were pretty small, but then also all the donor advised funds. So in many cases, this can take a non-working asset and make them a working asset from an AUM, also adding to the diversification of the overall portfolio and with much more liquidity, all things being equal. So want to really, really emphasize the fact that your community foundations allow that based on separate policies, but as you know, not just for non-cash gifts, but for liquid funds too. And quickly, I'll do this last one because I want to have time for questions too, is S Corp. There are more S Corps than C Corps and LLCs combined. I'm going to go through a super quick C Corp example. So a C Corp example is that, let's say that I'm the matriarch and I'm able to, I own 70% of my business. C Corp, I own 70%. My son owns 10%, my daughter owns 10%, and a key employee owns 10%. I'm charitably inclined. What have I been giving? Cash back. I could give to my community foundation, let's just say $1 million of C Corp stock. All out of my estate for estate tax purposes. I get the qualified appraiser, it's $1 million. I take a full $1 million fair market value deduction. Then my company itself, C Corp, could buy that back even with a note, but generally with retained earnings. That creates liquidity within the donor advised fund. And I've just used the lowest cost basis, most highly appreciated long-term capital gain asset I had. And you all know where I'm going. My daughter, my son, and my key employees' interest just went up. They own the same number of shares. There are less shares outstanding after they were retired based on the redemption. Hundreds and hundreds of those transactions happen each year. S Corp different. S Corp is where you actually can take, we have a separate donor advised fund just in Nevada in trust form just to take in S Corp. So in this case, I find this super, super interesting. About a quarter of all of our S Corp transactions are the RIAs themselves through all of this practice, merger acquisition, new existing partner buying in, etc. A quarter of our S Corps are actual RIAs, and that was the case here. So she was in California, very well-known financial advisor, but it was an S Corp. Most all these are S Corps. She donated $1 million of S Corp stock to a national donor advised fund, again in Nevada, full fair market value deduction. She had $200,000 of basis. We have to take her basis because when we then sell that, all of that gain, pre-contribution gain, post-contribution gain, any income during the holding period is all UBIT, unrelated business taxable income, which creates unrelated business income tax. But this is a way to hyper mitigate it. When the trust then sells it for the $1 million, we have $800,000 of gain. Those are at long-term capital gain rates at 20%. We have no state income tax, no 3.8% tax, assuming a share sale. So then when we turn around and make a grant, we'll just say 50-50 grant back to the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation and 50% over to the Seattle Foundation. We get an internal charitable income tax deduction for a gift of cash to other public charities, just like an individual would. So our 20% effective rate then drops to, or actual rate, drops to an 8% effective rate, a 60% discount from the 20%. We usually charge about a 2% fee on average. And then so 90 cents on the dollar is then ending up back at their community foundations. All this to say, and you saw on the slides from 2021 and 2023, we do roughly $300 to $400 million a year just in S Corp donations, if you include LLCs electing to be taxed as S. That many advisors are like, oh yeah, you can't do anything with those. Oh, absolutely you can. So we've been doing that since 2006. So with that, I will close. I hope this has been helpful. I think I've got about 6 or 7 minutes or so. So any questions, Cindy, definitely feel free to throw them out.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. It's time for Q&A. We have a few questions to get started, but for those of you in the audience who have others, don't forget to put them in the Q&A box. I think, Steve, you're going to kick us off with a question we received prior to today's event.
Yep. I will start just by asking Brian. Thank you, Brian. This is so exciting. I love this stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what trends you're seeing in terms of non-cash asset gifts this year, and especially if there are opportunities that you say, opportunities we might try to leverage more or avoid heading into 2026?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there are two things. One, and I may be reading too much into your question, but I will a little bit. A lot of advisors are talking about the 2026 changes in the tax law. And there are a number of changes that impact charitable giving, to me, all of which are BBs off of a battleship. They're benign. they make things a little less attractive. Advisors are talking about it like crazy. I think I've had 2 conversations with any donors about it at all. So donors like, I don't know, this doesn't seem that bad. It creates some confusion for even advisors because it's kind of a complex set of math to go through to determine the actual impact of charitable giving for 2026. So it may, Steve, pull some gifts forward into 2025, less about the actual impact and more about the perceived complexity. Separate from that, which may have been your key question, it's 2/3 are private business interests. We're still seeing a lot of merger and acquisition activity. We're seeing a lot in the AI space for sort of obvious reasons. So our sort of core of at least what we're seeing is the same, except for crypto. So crypto, it's just going nuts. And it always seems to do this right at year end, which is when we're dealing with everything else. Like, can you do this in June one year? It'd be nice to do it in June. But no, got to do it at the same time as everything else. So the crypto, obviously, with it hitting highs, just one after another. We're getting a lot of calls about gold. That's tangible personal property, all the concerns that I mentioned before. So right now, in terms of the hot things, it's gold calls and crypto calls. In terms of the boring things, which amount to about 5 times the hot things, it's boring LLCs, C Corps, S Corps, LPs.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Sure.
Carol asked in the chat, why was the REIT, the REIT sale, not considered a prearranged sale?
Great question, because it was verbal. So in all 50 states, I'm not an attorney, not giving tax, financial, legal advice, all those good disclaimers. In all 50 states, I can discuss anything with you verbally, and I could go sleep on it and wake up and go, nah, I'm not going to do it. Nothing you can do. So you can have verbal conversations, and you can even have letters of intent that just say non-binding. I think I may want to do this, but I could walk, you could walk, neither have recourse against the other. That's not a definitive purchase and sale binding agreement. The closer you get to that, someone will say, oh, it's still an LOI on Monday, and on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., it's going to be a purchase and sale agreement. So I'm going to give it at midnight on Monday. You're waving a big red cape to the IRS bull. I wouldn't do that in a million years. The closer you get to it, the more you're getting closer to the sun. But generally speaking, verbally, if it's non-binding, you're good. LOI, non-binding, especially early in the process, generally good. So that's why that worked.
Thank you.
Sure.
The other question from Carol here is, she's asking from a nonprofit perspective. As a nonprofit, how do we move the conversation away from cash gifts and from a cash gift to a non-cash gift? I'm going to tack another question to that too. Just along those lines for the professional advisors, how do you involve charities in these conversations about complex assets? And what advice do you give to charities about how to navigate that? That's a lot, so I'll repeat anything you'd like.
Okay. No, it's okay. I generally understand. So this is, I've got 2 or 3 minutes to answer some pretty big questions there, but I would say generally that I believe deeply that these most charitably inclined donors have these assets. I hit that really hard. But they don't think any charities are open to having conversations around them. It doesn't mean that the charity has to swallow it themselves. We'll pick on crypto. Carol may say, look, we got great donors and they got some crypto as an example. That's still a very small piece, but this is just an example. And you can say, wait a minute, we can work with the Seattle Foundation. We could work with the Greater Tacoma Foundation. We could work with some other third party. They could work with us. They could work with some. There's a whole ecosystem. So if you've got relationships, what I say very, very strongly is you shake the bushes like you've never shaken them before, where stuff's going to fall out. And where stuff falls out, there might be some things that you can handle yourselves internally or with consultants or others. Wonderful. Other ones you might be able to use somebody local, maybe national, whatever. It's a case-by-case basis. But if you're not doing that, we're not getting $3.84 billion to 3 charities from these donors who live under bridges. They're your donors. But they're going to those groups because they're open and comfortable having a conversation around what is the asset. Please don't put this, under purchase and sale agreement. What is the value that you're considering? So most of the gifts that we at least work on are over 250,000, usually at least 500,000, like 10 million tends to be the sweet spot. We had one gift this year was 287 million, largest we've ever gotten. But 287 million, C Corp stock, 1 donation. How many conversations with your donors would you need to have to make that worth it? Like 1 trillion, So if it didn't work 1 trillion times, but one time it worked. So these are larger gifts, and then the donors would view you in a more sophisticated way. And really the same thing with advisors, Steve. The main thing is, what are you trying to accomplish charitably? What's the why? What's the why first? Then you talk about the what and the when, is this at your estate or now? And the what really becomes then the asset. And once you discuss that, then it's reaching out, as you know, to you guys as charitable partners and solution providers during life or at death when they're planning something or selling something.
Well, I think it's time for us to wrap up, Steve.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate the questions from Carol and just everybody being on today. For everybody who was able to join us today, I hope you were able to learn some things. I learned a ton. I do every time I look up anything Brian has to say on this topic. If there are ways that we can incorporate charitable giving at the Community Foundation, for those of you who are working in Pierce County, we're here for you. Happy to work with you.
Absolutely. And same here. There's so much to learn when it comes to making gifts from complex assets. Before we close today, I want to remind everyone that when you hit the leave button for this meeting or we end the webinar, you'll be prompted to take a survey right away. And please do this. Not only does it provide us important information, but the completion of that survey is required for us to collect information to provide you with the CE credits. So in the next few days, we'll be sending out that follow-up email with a recording of today's event, as well as the slides and a link to Brian's book, since he literally wrote the book on giving non-cash assets to charities. And finally, for any questions about making the most of your client's philanthropy, we hope you'll see Steve and I as resources. Whether your clients are based in Pierce County, King County, or somewhere else, we're always delighted to answer questions, help brainstorm, make any needed referrals to ensure that your clients are successful, whatever their philanthropic goals may be. So thank you again for coming, and we hope to see you again at another PACE event in 2026.